This is The Professionals, a podcast by music business technology and broadcast media technology students on Outcast OCCR Owens Community College Radio. In this series, students will interview industry professionals in their respective fields to help gather an idea of what it's like to work in their industry.
Hello, my name is Andres Trejo, and I'm joined here with Joel Sebastianelli from BCSN. And Joel, would you like to introduce yourself and tell everyone about your job title?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I work as a storyteller and sports anchor for BCSN, also for 13 ABC. Work as a pit reporter for IndyCar radio coverage of the NTT IndyCar series. And I've been up here since March 2021. Before that, lived in Florida for about 9 years. Went to the University of Florida, worked for the NBC affiliate down there. And I've been able to cover almost every sport at every level at this point, even if it was only for one game or so. So I feel like it's given me some fun, enriching experiences, which is, I think, what you want out of a career in sports media.
Yeah, and what would you say a day in your life looks like?
Well, it depends. Hopefully it's not starting early in the morning. Mm-hmm. Although on a college football Saturday, it definitely does when you get up to the Big House or the Glass Bowl, and that's a noon kickoff. You want to get there, 2 hours before the game, talk to whoever you can on the sideline in the press box, make sure your information is right, shooting games on the sideline, all that stuff. But, a Monday through Friday, your day may not start until 3 o'clock. And you've got a half-hour show for BCSN, Sports Nightly. So you get your ducks in a row for that. It may be some stuff that you've shot the night before, because you're always going to be looking ahead. What kind of stuff can we put in the show later this week? What's on the schedule? You're shooting games, press conferences, things that don't normally start until the afternoon or at night. And it's a lot of time sitting in front of a computer, actually, for as much time as there is out shooting games and talking to people. Then you got to come back, and sometimes in crunch time, like short periods of time, editing and writing. But I think that's kind of fun, all that editing and writing that's under a deadline. Like when I had essays and stuff in school, I could never write that until the last minute. So I think it trained me well for having a show that's on at 10:30 and you've got a bunch of stuff to do in an hour and a half. I can work under that. I would get the same amount of stuff done if you gave me 8 hours to do it, because that's just kind of how my brain works.
And you said you came here in March of 2021. A year before that was COVID. And how did that sort of affect your career and sort of the journey that the position you're in today?
It's why I'm here. I was working in Panama City Beach, and I was already looking for places to go. I had told the company that I was working for that I was not going to be re-signing with them. And when I told them that, and when they hired somebody else, I had multiple interviews that were ongoing. So, things were working well. And then that was all St. Patrick's Day weekend of 2020. Everybody who I was interviewing with said, hey, things are going to be on hold for a while. We're no longer hiring for these positions. They had just hired somebody else. So all of a sudden I found myself out of a job right at the start of COVID, like the worst possible timing ever. I worked in a meat cooler for about a year. So the complete opposite in every way of everything I wanted to be. I was living in a warm environment. I was covering sports, and I was working at night, right? Working in a meat cooler. I was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was doing manual labor, hauling pallet jacks, all that kind of stuff, working around a lot of blood.
Yeah.
But that's life. Like it was something to do just to get paid. And the whole time I was thinking, all right, even if you had bad days in sports media, if you got stressed, it beats being in the meat cooler, and I don't want to go back to the meat cooler. So when jobs opened up finally in other places, like a year later, I had the opportunity to come up here. I jumped at that. And now it at least gives me that perspective to realize that as disappointed as you may be with things that may be going on, or as tough as it may get, hey, the meat cooler's out there. Do you really want to go back to that? No, like a bad day at work doing any of this is way better than I think doing anything else, particularly being in the meat cooler, I don't recommend that for anybody.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, why here? Did you have any other opportunities to sort of go anywhere else in the country, or did this just stand out?
Both. The least flattering answer is it was the job opportunity that I had, and it was that weird time in COVID flux where we weren't really out of COVID, but it was still happening. We were doing job interviews with the masks, and it was like, absolutely, I want to get out of the meat cooler, let's go. But I was also so excited to come work for BCSN because I don't think anybody really has quite what this area has with BCSN. You know, like on a Friday night, we will stream 10 high school football games, like a full crew, camera guys, director, play-by-play announcer, sideline reporter, sometimes a color guy up in the booth. And on a Friday night, I'll spend 3.5 hours in our studio with a couple of analysts, and we've got like a high school football red zone show that we're doing. Who else has that in any other market in the country? So I thought that all the things that we do here, being the flagship station for the Walleye, the Mud Hens, the way Toledo embraces its sports, the way it's kind of split with Bowling Green, Toledo, and then the way Toledo and Bowling Green are split with Ohio State and Michigan. It's just such a unique fan base, a sports culture that when this opened up, like, how could you say no to that? It's a really fun place to watch sports and cover sports.
Yeah, I agree. And you worked in Florida, so what would you say is a big difference apart from the weather as in broadcasting down there than to up here?
That's a good question. I'm interested in the people element of sports. I always say, like, unironically, that if politicians were more interested in college football, they would understand their constituents better. So just the fan bases themselves, like covering Florida and Florida State, it's a very different vibe than covering Ohio State and Michigan because they're just so representative of their communities. Like living in the Florida Panhandle, the further north you go in Florida, the further south you get in the United States. So you're like Central Florida, you're out in orange groves, and you are in the southern United States. But up here, it is, you know, it's like the Midwest. It's Big Ten country. So just like walking around a tailgate, it's a much different feeling. But what makes those places different is what makes them great, and it's what makes it fun to be in each spot. Once the game actually kicks off, I think it's actually just about the exact same thing anywhere you go. It's just a difference in scale. You know, whether you're covering like the Big Ten and there's 50 people in a press conference after the game and ESPN is there and the Associated Press is there, or you're at a MAC press conference, it's after the game and it may be just you and the Toledo Blade, like just two of you asking questions to Scott Leffler or asking questions to Jason Candle. So in those environments, it's really important to come prepared. Make sure you are comfortable and you're building good relationships with everybody, because you may not have an opportunity, even working for a big station, to have much of a relationship with Florida's football coach, Billy Napier, or with Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. But when you're covering Toledo and Bowling Green, you are actually going to have intimate personal conversations with players and head coaches because there just aren't that many people around covering those teams. So you want to be knowledgeable about everything that's happening. You want to have good relationships with people, and you want your reporting to reflect all of that.
Yeah.
I guess that's a difference in size more than it is location, because there's schools like FAU and FIU that it's probably very similar to Toledo and BG. But that's been the difference, at least in the markets that I was in, to the market that I'm in now, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And I discovered that you attended the University of Florida.
Go Gators. You can't see me now, but I'm doing the Gator chomp on the right-hand side, right over left.
Yeah, so how did that experience sort of prepare you for the professional world? And if there was a certain class that stuck out to you that really prepared you, what would you recommend for people trying to sort of follow in your footsteps in your career? that you would recommend them to take?
I'm going to answer the second question first, because nobody listening to this, I assume, is going to the University of Florida. So my experiences there only matter so much. The most important thing was not any class in particular. It was just getting involved and doing the job. There is no substitute for hands-on experience. So what you can do in the classroom is great. Doing this, talking to people, you got to know how your boards work. You got to know how to use the cameras. But any actual experience you can get, whether it's internships or it can be stuff at Owens, like covering the baseball team. But you got to actually go out and do stuff outside of class, because it's like reps. Like if you're trying to run a marathon, reading a book or watching people on YouTube do it in a classroom sort of environment is only going to help you, I guess, know what the form is, but you actually got to go out and make some steps, go outside, do some runs in order to get towards running a marathon. So the more actual hands-on experience you can get, the better. If there's opportunities through a class to get involved outside of class, do it. Because this is fun. Like, do it. Don't think of it as extra work. Think of it as like a cool thing that you can do because you like sports. And so Florida was good with that because there's just so many teams there that there's no shortage of opportunities to get involved. But I would think that even here, with BCSN nearby and them always looking for people, and I mean, Toledo, Bowling Green, there are still a bunch of schools and a bunch of teams and a bunch of things happening that there's going to be opportunities to get involved everywhere. Get involved. There's no substitute for being able to do that.
Yeah, and I would consider yourself a lucky person as you got to experience sort of broadcasting in 3 different states, in Rhode Island, Florida, and Ohio. And what would you say what type of advantages did that give you, being in 3 different, what I would say, pretty diverse states in the broadcasting careers? Yeah,
so I grew up in Rhode Island. First job I ever had was announcing at a short track right on the border, Rhode Island and Massachusetts. I don't know, I like to move around. I'm just one of those people. I think this is a people job. And so the more people you meet, the wider your experience of the world gets. So you were kind of telling me this earlier. Like, do you have much of an idea of what you want to do? Like some kind of reporting just in general?
Yeah.
All right. So if it's reporting in general, it really helps if you like people and if you're interested in people. I am surprised in any state when you talk to reporters and they're just not people. Because look, you're going to meet a lot of interesting people, but a lot of times they have access to opportunities and things that you don't. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of fame. You will rub shoulders and have interesting conversations with these people, but they are humans. They're people, which means they're going to make mistakes like anybody else. If you don't like people, you are going to resent them for all of that quickly. So it becomes much more enjoyable to cover these people. It's much easier to be empathetic with these people, to tell their stories. If you like people and you're interested in talking to people and understanding similarities and differences and hearing life stories, versus if you just don't like people anyway. If you aren't really a people person, there's all kinds of things in media that you can do and you can excel at. That's okay. Like, knowing what you aren't is a great step to knowing what you are. So kind of bringing it back to what you asked me, culturally, knowing New England and knowing the South and knowing here, it just kind of broadens the understanding of people in general, not just fan bases, but people. And I think when you're doing interviews and you're just talking to people and you're kind of going around in life, there's a lot of value to having that.
Yeah. And is inquiry and reporting something you've always wanted to do since you were little, or is it maybe something you discovered in high school or college and you're like, hey, I think I might like that?
I think it was probably the second one. I always wanted to do play-by-play, and I did a little bit of that when I was in college for the Florida soccer teams, and actually did a little gymnastics, some softball. I still do some of that now, I guess, with IndyCar, so it scratches that itch, but there's a lot more jobs, and there's more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a lot easier to make a solid living and have career stability in something like working for a TV station than there is in something like play-by-play, where you may only have a job that's part-time, and you got to find, hey, you can move out to Florida to do this from Ohio, but we're only going to pay you for part of the season. You have to find another job on top of that and hope that it works with the schedule for this baseball team or for this basketball team. It's kind of tough to make your life work around that. So I have a lot of respect for anybody who can do it. This was kind of the easiest. It was the path of least resistance, you could say, but I really enjoyed doing it. And I think I realized I was good at it too. But I guess that's the good thing about working in this industry is there's a lot of different jobs, and whatever it is that you're interested in, whatever it is that you feel like you might want to do or you want to try, those opportunities are out there if you want to pursue that.
Yeah. And one last question here. You've broadcasted for many different states, many years, professional, college, high school sports even.
You're making me feel old now. I don't how many years has it been? It's been, I don't know, I'm almost 30. Yeah, it's been a decent amount of years, I guess.
In all of your years broadcasting, what is one moment that you have witnessed live or broadcasted live that still sticks in your mind and you think about it to this day?
I broadcasted a triple play. That was kind of cool for Gator softball. That's not like the emotional answer, but that's the cool answer.
Yeah.
It was a triple play in a Gator softball game. As far as stories that still stand out, some of the stuff during COVID and during Hurricane Michael. I was in Panama City when Hurricane Michael hit, which was a Category 5. It decimated the area. And just coming back from catastrophe, it's another reason I think it helps to be really well-rounded, being able to cover news. The more experience you can have doing everything, anchoring, reporting, writing, it's going to help you in situations like that where pretty much all forms of communication are down and you're doing television on the radio for the only radio station that's still up and you just need to talk. There's no script in front of you. You're just telling people what you see. Well, I was able to do that because I did some play-by-play work. It just came natural. So I guess that's kind of something that I want people in college to know. Just do everything. Even if you hate it, do it for a little bit so you know that you hate it. And then you've got that experience built up to know that you don't want to do that, first of all, but also you're still going to learn something from that. And it's hopefully a skill set that you can take that you didn't have before. Because you never know when there's a hurricane or something else, and you may need some of that from years in the past.
Yeah. I'd like to thank Joel here. This was the Industry Professional Podcast on Outcast OCCR Owens Community College Radio.
This has been the Professionals Podcast by Music Business Technology and Broadcast Media Technology students. Join us next time on Outcast OCCR Owens Community College Radio.